Hey future York students!
I'm Sidel.
And I'm Neetha.
And welcome to the Faculty of Liberal Arts and Professional Studies Program Chat Series.
We want you to know that here in LA&PS you will study what you love and learn what you need.
In this chat, you'll be hearing from future professors as well as current students about the program.
What it has to offer you, like internship opportunities.
And what your first year in the program may look like.
Alright, should we get started?
Yeah, let's get started.
Enjoy, everybody.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our Liberal Arts and Professional Studies chat on two of our more interesting programs. Today, we're going to be talking about linguistics and speech-language science. Before we get started, I do want to take a moment to recognize the land that we are on. This meeting is virtual, and because of that, we are not all actually gathered in the same space. York's land acknowledgement might not represent the territory that you are currently on, and I would ask that if that is the case, that you each take the responsibility to acknowledge the traditional territory that you are on and its current treaty holders. As a member of the York University community, I recognize that many Indigenous nations have long-standing relationships with the territories upon which York University campuses are located that precede the establishment of York University. York University acknowledges its presence on the traditional territory of many Indigenous nations. The area known as Takaranto has been taken care of by the Anishinaabe Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Huron-Wendat, and the Métis. It is now home to many Indigenous peoples. We acknowledge the current treaty holders, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. This territory is subject of the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement to peacefully share and care for the Great Lakes region. Now I'd like to welcome a very special guest we have with us today from our Department of Linguistics, Professor Elfner. Good morning, Professor Elfner.
All right, so hi everybody. So as you know, I'm Professor Emily Elfner. I'm a professor in the linguistics program at York. So this is our introduction to the linguistics and DLLL at York University Kiel campus. Our current program director for undergraduate programs in linguistics is Professor Chandan Narayan. You can reach him at either of these two email addresses. More information about our program can also be found on our website. The link is right there below. So what is linguistics? This is an area of study that you may not know a lot about, as it's not taught, usually taught in high schools. However, it's a really fascinating area of study which draws together a lot of different subject areas having to do with language. So linguistics, formally speaking, is the scientific study of natural language. Is a broad concern. We're concerned with discovering the universal principles of human language. So how do languages all across the world, what similarities do they have? And also taking these universal principles and applying them to systematic descriptions of individual languages. So in other words, what can we discover about languages across the world? What do they have in common? And then what does this tell us about the diversity of human languages spoken around the globe? Linguists investigate sound and word patterns. So looking at languages from a grammatical sense, we look at sentence structure. We look at how languages change over time, how language is used in society. We look at how language is acquired, so both by children acquiring their first language, as well as adults acquiring a second language, as well as those complicated areas where you might be bilingual in more than one language. We also look at the relationship between language and the mind, so interactions with psychology and cognitive science, and also how language and society are related to each other. Some of the questions that we ask in linguistics include some of the following. So for example, as I mentioned, a large part of what we do is trying to understand how human languages have these underlying common principles. We ask how languages are alike and how do they differ. We ask about how language and the brain are related to each other, so drawing on principles of neuroscience. We also look at how language and society are related to each other, how languages change across time, how children acquire language, and how we understand and produce sentences. In linguistics, in labs at York University, we have a number of different options for program in terms of our degree offerings. You can take a BA, a specialized honors BA, an honors BA, an honors double major BA, an honors major minor BA, or an honors minor, all involving a different number of Ling credits. So I study Ling at York, specifically through LAPS at the Kiel campus. So the main reason is to really get a solid foundation in the core aspects of linguistics. So through doing your linguistics degree or major and minor, you'll get foundational courses in the areas of phonetics, phonology, morphology, syntax, and semantics, while also taking courses in other areas of linguistics, such as psycholinguistics, language acquisition, linguistic variation and change, and discourse analysis. You'll learn how to argue logically and gain solid problem solving and competitive critical thinking skills. Primarily, the way that we do this is through analyzing data sets which are drawn from real languages that are spoken from around the world. These include really global languages like English and Japanese, as well as endangered languages, including Indigenous languages spoken in Canada. Through our courses, you'll also get experience writing, so really having the opportunity to perfect your expository writing skills, also your analytical skills and problem solving. A number of our courses are interdisciplinary in nature, and so our courses also support undergraduates in other fields within York University. So these include areas such as cognitive science, psychology, gender, sexuality, and women's studies, English, anthropology, children, childhood, and youth studies, communication studies, law and society, and sociology, as well as individual language majors in DLLL. Our classes tend to be fairly small, which allows you to really get to know your professors as well as your peers, your fellow students in linguistics classes. We also have 10 full-time professors who have doctoral degrees in a wide variety of areas of linguistics. So you'll get exposed to really specialized knowledge in a variety of different areas of this field. Here are a few sample courses from our linguistics program. As I'll talk about in a second, in the first year you would take Ling 1000, which is our introductory course to linguistics, which gives you sort of an overview of what to expect in the field in your study of linguistics. In the second and subsequent years, you would take courses, for example, in phonetics, which looks at how sounds are produced and perceived in languages. You'll take Syntax 1, which is a course looking at how sentences are structured. You'll take a course in psycholinguistics, which involves the interaction between psychology and linguistics, so how language is processed. You may take a course on second language acquisition, which looks at how language is acquired by adults who are starting to learn their second or maybe third or fourth language. Language and the brain looks at the connections between the brain and language. And finally, there's a course on field methods, which is a course where you would have the opportunity to work with a speaker of a language that you don't know anything about, and be able to learn how to actually document this language through all the skills that you've learned in your other linguistics courses. These are just a sampling of courses, and we have a wide variety of other courses which I'd encourage you to take a look at. So as part of our first year linguistics experience, we offer a 1000 level course, Introduction to Linguistics, which is a full year, 6 credit course. This course is intended to provide an overview of the field. So you'll examine these fundamental principles of language structure and interpretation. You'll learn about the core areas of linguistics, including phonology, which is the structure of sounds, morphology, which is the structure of words, and syntax, which is the structure of sentences. You'll also learn about other aspects of the field, including phonetics, semantics, language acquisition, historical linguistics, and language variation. And like many of the other linguistics courses that we offer, most of your data analysis will be drawn from languages from around the world. We have three other Ling courses, which don't have prerequisites, and that's form part of the first year Ling experience as well. These include courses on language and gender, language and culture, and language and mind. In terms of student life, we have a vibrant Student Linguistics Association at York, which is student run. We also offer a linguistics lecture series. Approximately 3 times per semester, we'll invite scholars in linguistics to come and give a talk about their research, and we strongly encourage undergraduate students to attend these talks. We also have support through Founders College and peer mentors. So after completing a linguistics degree, there are many different options that you might consider in terms of career opportunities. Many students end up going into further studies in linguistics to pursue a graduate degree, for example, a master's degree. This can be done through, for example, the Linguistics and Applied Linguistics graduate program at York. Many students pursue careers in speech-language pathology and audiology, as well as communication disorders more broadly. You may decide to pursue further study through law school, teaching English as a second language, education, or you may pursue a career involving aspects of translation and interpreting, publishing and editing, lexicography, which has to do with creating dictionaries. A growing field of interest is in computational linguistics and natural language processing, or NLP. Many linguists are involved in language documentation and revitalization, especially of Indigenous languages in Canada. And there are also opportunities in terms of planning and administering language policy as in government work. So thank you very much. That's the end of our presentation, and we're happy to answer additional questions.
Thank you so much, Professor Elfner. That was a wonderful overview of the linguistics program. I'd like to invite another special guest to come and talk a little bit about linguistics here at York University, Professor Duncan from the University Linguistics Department. Good morning, Professor Duncan.
Hi, thanks for having us here.
I was wondering if we could start by talking a little bit about the field. We learned an overview of what the study is going to be like, but I know a lot of students are always interested in where the studies are developing and what they're going to be looking at versus sort of what the field was like 10, 15 years ago. I was wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about how linguistics has changed in that time and where it's headed.
Yeah, absolutely. So linguistics has actually been changing quite a lot recently. It's a very active field. And what we've seen is that it's become more experimental and more quantitative, and we're looking at more data. So there's a real expansion of what we've seen. We've been expanding into signed languages, not simply spoken languages. Indigenous languages are languages that have really come to the forefront recently. And what this has meant is we've had access to a lot of endangered languages recently that really there wasn't a lot of work that had previously been done. And so we've had a lot more accessible data, and this is giving us a better picture of what is going on in languages around the world.
Fantastic. And when you think about the kind of studies that students are undertaking and how they develop and move through, it's very easy to make kind of relationships between the academic knowledge that's being learned with morphology and syntax. But I was wondering if you could touch a little bit on some of those other skills that students learn as they're coming through that are going to help them as they move into a career world, if it's not necessarily a directly related career.
Yeah, sure. So linguistics is actually a really broad discipline, as Professor Elfner was discussing in her presentation. And so what that means is we provide a lot of skills that are applicable to other fields and to other jobs. And there's a lot of pathways that can come out of the study of linguistics. Linguistics, you learn a lot of analytical skills. We work with a lot of data. And so you develop really strong critical thinking and problem solving skills. You learn how to do really strong research and analyze arguments and sort of how to compare different types of arguments, which is of course something that is really important in everyday life and in other jobs as well. We lead directly into, or our skills allow you to move into areas like speech language pathology and audiology. There's a lot of people who work within editing and teaching as well. So for instance, this is at all levels of teaching. In primary teaching, literacy is very important. Adult education, teaching different languages and so on. So there really are a lot of skills that our students really develop over the course of their time in our program.
And I know from experience how much students love working with our linguistics professors and really working through the field and learning those skills. I was wondering if we could talk a little bit about the program here at York and here on Keele campus. There are more than one linguistics program that's being offered out there in Ontario, but I think that our program here at York is pretty unique. And I was wondering if you could talk about some of the ways that our program is unique in contrast to those other institutions.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the program here at York is really special for a number of reasons. One of the first reasons is that we provide a really strong basis in theoretical linguistics. So these are the areas like phonetics and phonology, morphology, and syntax. But we also are really strong in terms of sociolinguistics, so how different groups of people use language and how language varies amongst different users, and also experimental linguistics. So you're getting a real, you have the ability to look at linguistics from all different angles, from different places. We're also a small department, and so what that means for the students is it's really accessible. They get to know each other very well. They get to know their professors really well, and they can become involved in the department. They can become involved in the research that is being done. So there's a lot of opportunities there that we provide.
Sounds fantastic. I get a lot of, this is a question that I get from a lot of students, and I'm wondering if you might have a good answer for me. A lot of students and even parents are always asking, what can they do before a class starts? They've made the decision, York Linguistics is right for them. They're going to come to study with us in first year, but they're really eager to dive into the material. I was wondering if you had any recommendations, whether that be related material that they could look at, or anything really that they could read to help prep them a little for first year.
Yeah, sure. So there's a fantastic book that is written by a Canadian linguist, Gretchen McCullough, and it's called Because Internet. So it's a really accessible book. It's very interesting, and you can get a real feel for what linguistics is like and some interesting information about it. As well, there's one place that you can find a lot of interesting linguistic information is in movies, actually, and in books. For example, a few years ago, there was a movie called Arrival where a linguist was the central character. And it's actually a really good sort of portrayal of how linguists go about learning or beginning to study a language that they know nothing about. So the field methods course that Professor Elfner was discussing is very similar to what is actually going on in that movie. As well, if you're interested in constructed languages, so these are languages that are made up for movies and for novels as well. Dothraki in Avatar, in Lord of the Rings, they all have really really well-constructed, interesting languages that are created. And in fact, Tolkien was a linguist who was very, very interested and very engaged in languages in general. And you can see that throughout all of his books.
That's fantastic. I had no idea. So students can dive into all this material and get excited about linguistics, but when it comes to sort of feet on the ground in the semester next year, do you have any advice for students starting out in linguistics and the study of linguistics?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is, first of all, to be engaged in your classes. And what that means is attend your classes and make sure that you're keeping up with the material, keeping up with the readings. Learning is a process that does involve a period of not understanding. And I think that that's really important to embrace. And when you have questions, make sure you ask those questions, that, you're certainly not the only one with questions. And you can ask those in classes. You can come to office hours. We love to have students come in and talk to us one-on-one. And yeah, just really be engaged in your classes. Really, participate would be my recommendation.
Fantastic. I want to thank you so much, Professor Duncan, for sharing some of your thoughts on the study of linguistics and the uniqueness here at York University.
Yeah, thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Perfect. Now, I know some of you have been waiting very patiently to hear a little bit more about another program offered through our linguistics program, which is our speech language science program. And for that, I'm going to introduce yet another special guest we have with us this morning, Professor Narayan. Good morning, Professor Narayan.
Thanks for having us here. Let me get my slideshow ready for you. Okay. My name is Chandan Narayan. I am the undergrad program director for linguistics. And I'm going to tell you about the brand new speech and language sciences program in the Department of Languages, Literatures, and Linguistics here at York. You can see my email here. I have two emails. One is a personal email, and the other is if it's directly about this program or the linguistics program in general, you can email me at lapsling@yorku.ca. And here I've given you the website, the URL for this particular program, the Speech and Language Sciences program. Okay, so let's jump right in. Speech and language sciences. So what is it? Well, before I get into what it is, I want to tell you that it's a brand new program in linguistics, in the linguistics section of our department. What it does is that it combines a lot of aspects of traditional linguistics with psychology, biology, kinesiology, and applies this knowledge to clinical issues related to disorders of speech, hearing, and other language problems that one might encounter either in development or as a result of brain injury. All of these are subsumed under the umbrella of speech and language sciences. Okay. Now, speech and language sciences at York, here abbreviated SPLS. You'll see this often, this abbreviation, if you're interested in this program. It's a specialized honors BA stream within the linguistics section of DLLL, or the Department of Languages, Literatures, and Linguistics. And it's geared towards students who are intending on pursuing postgraduate work in either speech pathology or audiology. So the program is really honed for those students who are looking for programs, master's programs in speech path or audiology. What's interesting about this program is that it's the first of its kind in the GTA, and there's only one other program like this, undergraduate speech and language program in Ontario. Okay, now, keep in mind that if you pursue this specialized honors BA and you come out with this degree, you're not a practicing speech pathologist. You have to continue your studies to acquire certification through a master's program in speech pathology or audiology, of which there are many such programs in Ontario and in Canada. But what our BA program does is give you all of the pre-required courses that those graduate programs demand that you have in order to apply to those postgraduate programs. Okay. That's a little bit of an overview about what particularly this field is at York. Now, back to what it is that we do in speech and language sciences. Well, we ask lots of questions about the nature of speech, about the nature of language, and ultimately about how those two components might be disrupted in some way. So we ask questions like, what are the physical principles involved in producing speech? This would be generally called acoustics, acoustic phonetics. We really study that in pretty in detail. How do we hear? We study the ear, all different aspects of hearing and perception, which is the psychological instantiation of hearing. How do we organize the components of speech? This might be called phonology. How does our brain organize speech sounds? How does our brain categorize P's from B's, T's from D's? How do children acquire their first language? This is a huge field that embarks on this, elucidating this big question of how do children effortlessly acquire their first language without being taught. And crucially, in speech and language sciences, how is this process, how could this process be disrupted? And what are the consequences for those types of disruptions? We also ask what's involved in rehabilitation when speech or language is disrupted by issues of hearing loss, developmental delays, or brain injury, brain trauma. What happens to your speech? What happens to your language when any of these sorts of things might happen to the brain ultimately, or the ear? Okay. Continuing on. So the honors BA in speech and language sciences is a 57 credit program. So those 57 credits come from courses in linguistics, psychology, and kinesiology. The linguistics courses are courses that would be common in the linguistics stream as well. These are the core courses of linguistics, like phonology, or the study of how we organize sounds, phonetics, how speech is produced, morphology, words and combinations of sounds, syntax, sentence structure. All of those courses would also be part of the speech and language sciences. In addition, students in this program take courses from psychology, namely developmental psychology, and statistics. And then they also take courses from kinesiology, such as anatomy and physiology. Now, what's special about this speech and language sciences program is that these courses, like developmental psychology, introduction to psychology, physiology, anatomy, those are oftentimes very, very in-demand courses. And so a typical student who is not a psychology major, who's not a kinesiology major, might have difficulty getting into those programs. If you're a speech and language sciences major, you have reserved seats in those large core courses in those other departments. So you're able to complete your degree in a standard 4-year period. Whereas if you were trying to take these courses and you weren't a declared speech and language sciences major, it might take you longer. It might be more difficult for you to get into those courses because they're in high demand for psychology majors, for kinesiology majors, et cetera. Okay, so this is a honors BA, which means that if you do this, it's a specialized honors BA. I should take that back. The specialized honors BA that where this is the focus of your study. You can't double major with 2 majors if you're doing this speech and language sciences major, because it's a very demanding course of study. Okay, so students who enter into speech and language sciences at York are committed to this, are focused on the goal of getting into master's programs in speech pathology or audiology or communication disorders. Now, students who do take this specialized honors BA are not guaranteed entry into master's or professional programs. But what this program does is it streamlines your curriculum such that you're not wasting any of your credits. All the credits that you're taking are focused on the prerequisites that are required for those professional programs. Okay. Why study speech and language sciences at York? If you watch the linguistics presentation, the linguistics program at York is unique in that you get a core, solid foundation in the core aspects of linguistics, the core theoretical aspects of linguistics, as well as exposure to experimental linguistics, sociolinguistics, field methods courses, working with languages that you're not familiar with. All of those are really special aspects of our linguistics program. But you also get critical coursework that serve as prerequisites for these master's programs. Okay, like I said, it's a tailored course list with a streamlined curriculum. We've surveyed all of the master's programs in speech and language pathology and audiology in Canada and the US, and come up with a core set of courses that are typically required of undergrads. Okay, so you get reserved seats in these non-linguistics courses like psychology, statistics, kinesiology, and you have relatively small classes in the linguistics courses that you'll be taking. So I'll talk about this in a second, but the speech and language sciences courses within linguistics are going to be relatively small, around 20 to 25 students, which is pretty unique at a university of York's size. We have 10 full-time professors. We all have specialties in various aspects of linguistics. The reason why this is highlighted is that our program is relatively small, which means that you get to know your professors, which is very important for lots of reasons. But most notably, if you know your professors and they know you, they'll be more likely to really be committed to your progress through the program, committed to your success in the program, and be willing to vouch for you when it comes time for you to apply to these professional programs that I talked about. So here's a sample list of courses that a student might take if she's interested in the speech and language sciences. Intro to Linguistics, Ling 1000, that everybody needs to take that in order to proceed with the higher level linguistics courses, such as syntax, right? Such as Ling 2200, which is the Capstone course that I'll talk to you about in a second. This is the Capstone Speech and Language Sciences course. Then you might take a stats course in the psych department. Again, it's a high demand course, so we have reserved seats in those courses. A physiology course in the kinesiology department, and then upper division courses in linguistics like first language acquisition, and then a fourth year course, which is a practicum type course called Communication Disorders, Research and Clinical Perspectives, which will actually be taught by a practicing speech language pathologist in order for students to get some understanding as to what actually is involved in being a speech pathologist. So this course is pretty special. It's which is taken by fourth year students typically. Okay. I mentioned this Capstone course, the first SPLS course, Intro to Speech and Language Sciences. What this course does is it introduces students to key aspects of speech sciences, namely acoustic phonetics, speech perception, speech production, audition. So all those aspects of how we produce sound, how we produce speech sounds, how we listen to speech sounds, what our ears are doing, and what our brain is doing when we have to process those speech sounds, as well as some aspects of speech language development. Not everything, because we have a whole course dedicated to language development or first language acquisition. And also we touch upon disorders, speech and language disorders. So this is sort of a really well-rounded introduction to the field, but with a heavy emphasis on acoustics and phonetics and disruptions in those aspects of language. Okay, as sort of a entree to the higher level linguistics courses and ultimately that fourth year practicum course. Okay. Admissions requirements. If you're coming straight from high school, we require some math, right? So, and English, but most importantly is your GPA. So students with a GPA in the 80s are typically admitted to our speech and language sciences program. If you're transferring from a different program within York, it's similarly competitive in that we require that you have taken at least one linguistics course, typically Ling 1000, and that you have a minimum of a B average in whatever linguistics courses that you take, and a cumulative B average in your courses across the board. So not just linguistics. So it's pretty competitive. And the reason why we demand high marks is because we know that the professional programs in speech and language pathology and audiology are in high demand and are very competitive, and GPA means a lot. And so we want students who are focused and who are doing well in linguistics doing well in high school to continue that trend, to better their chances at getting admission into master's programs. Okay. And lastly, opportunities after graduation. With this specialized honors program, it's really geared towards students who want to move on to master's programs in speech path. That said, that's not the only thing you can do. If you get through this program, you are very, very well suited for graduate studies in linguistics and related disciplines, such as psychology, applied linguistics. You will be very, very well suited for graduate study in those fields. In addition, there are graduate programs in communication disorders. It's sort of a pre-master's programs. So sort of a pre-master's in speech path. We see students going into communication disorders. Some students have gone on to law school. Given the fact that they've acquired all of these critical thinking and problem solving skills, they often succeed in law school. Many students take the TESOL certificate program in order to teach English as a second language. Many students go abroad to teach English, as well as careers in translation, interpreting, publishing, editing, IT. Just as a personal anecdote, when I finished my undergraduate degree many, many years ago, my first job was working for a branding company because it was a company that came up with brand names. And so they hired me as a linguist because I knew a lot about how languages put sounds together. I knew a lot about the history of words in English. I knew a lot about classical languages. And so I was able to use all that knowledge to come up with brand names, some brand names that you might be familiar with today, in fact. So there's lots of opportunities after graduation from the specialized honors program in speech language sciences, as well as linguistics. But for speech and language sciences, the trajectory is really focused on master's programs in speech language pathology and audiology. Okay, so that concludes my program. I hope to see you all soon.
Hope you enjoyed the program chat, everyone.
If you have any questions about our LA&PS programs, be sure to visit our website to learn more.
And make sure to stay in touch with us for a chance to win a $100 gift card at the York Bookstore. The link to our website is in the description box below.
You can also send your questions to us, the LA&PS student recruitment team.
We'd love to hear from you, so send us an email at goyork@yorku.ca.
And we look forward to seeing you all on campus next year.
Bye.
Bye.